Please make sure to download the Stitcher Smart Radio app on your iPhone or Android phone. I have it. Use the promo code DAVID to automatically have the show put in your favorites and also be entered to win $100 every single month given away. You can also sign up at Stitcher.com/David Pakman Show. Obviously, it's completely free, Lewis.
Naturally.
Absolutely no cost associated with that app. Car and Driver. I was actually, just the other day, I was in a waiting room somewhere, and I picked up an issue of Car and Driver magazine. And there was a fascinating article about charting traffic safety and fatality data. And I was interested because recently we had Dr. Aubrey de Grey on the show, who talked about his research into the so-called curing of aging and simply eliminating the processes by which people age and eventually die. And he mentioned that as life expectancy increases, driving could actually be outlawed altogether because it would just be such a risky behavior. In other words, if it's equally risky that you might die in a car accident, but the life expectancy goes up, the average car accident has the potential to take away a higher and higher number of years of life. Does that make sense?
Right.
So I actually started looking into, well, has automobile driving become more or less risky in terms of the possibility that you will actually die? And it is actually lower than ever. If we look at data dating back really for quite some time, I mean, all the way going back into the 50s. Maybe the 60s. In 2009, for example, motor vehicle-related fatalities actually were at an all-time low in the United States. Only 1.13 deaths per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, okay? In total, deaths fell to about 34,000. And this is the lowest number since the Department of Transportation started recording data in 1950. So it does go that far back. And crash rates fell to their lowest numbers as well, 185 crashes per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Injury rates dropped as well. So the chance of dying in any given crash is at an all-time low. The number of injuries per crash has dropped slightly. This could be a trend since, this is a more recent trend since that was kept track of since 1988. First of all, does that surprise you, given what we hear around the dangers of drunk driving, automobile accidents, etc.?
No, because I just associate it with advances in car safety technology.
Right.
So doesn't surprise me now.
Also not surprising to me that an overwhelming percentage of deadly car accidents involve what?
Alcohol?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No question about it. And so we have to think about, well, what is it that's going on here? The economic crisis has had a little bit of a factor here. As we know, the youngest drivers are often those most at risk. And because of the economic crisis, a lot less very, very young people are having cars and driving, period. That's going to affect the numbers. But overall, we have seen a steady and regular decline over the years in the deaths per miles driven, per vehicle miles driven. Given that, what do you think, Lewis, about the future of driving? I mean, eventually, will we as a society say, you know what? We can develop the technology that will make it much safer to get around still in vehicles where we're actually going to get away from the individual person merging onto the highway and getting off and speeding and doing all of the risky behavior. Is it all going to be handled a very different way?
Yes, I don't know how different, but I think it's only going to get safer. I think it could plateau. I don't see us regressing in any way.
Could you see a situation, though, where maybe it would start with certain highways, okay, where as you pull onto the highway, some kind of computerized system takes control of your car. It keeps cars in line, no wild lane changes. It may accelerate the speed at which we can travel because if the computer is controlling vehicles and the distance between them, they can certainly travel closer together. And then you push a button that you want to get off, you get off, and then you take over control of your car. Is that a possibility? What do you think, Natan?
Well, what I was thinking, this is going to sound really controversial to First Amendment freaks, and I consider myself, like a liberal, First Amendment type guy. But imagine if your car didn't turn on unless you did a breathalyzer and it found that you had a 0 alcohol rating on your blood.
That already exists for certain people.
But but only as a result of getting a DUI.
That's right. I think that the legal challenges of instituting it, on everyone would be difficult. What if? Would you favor something like that, Lewis? I mean, we know statistics tell us how much of an increased risk factor driving is, or drunk driving is in a lot of these accidents. Isn't that by definition? How make the argument that it wouldn't help the number of car accidents?
No doubt it would. But I'm not sure if I'd be for that. I guess.
Why would you be against it?
Yeah.
Do you want more
I guess,
car accidents?
You know what? If I'm going to sound like Mitt Romney here, if the state passed a law that required, that, I'd be fine with it.
But what do you care about whether it's the state or the federal government? You're not a states' rights guy. If you're in favor of it, who cares who passes it?
I think it should be up to the states.
But why? I don't understand that.
Well, here's what I think.
Okay, go ahead, Nate.
When people say it's up to the states, how do the states decide? Is it up to the people who live in the states, or is it up to 25 legislators? I mean, who is it up to?
I feel like it's a bit more intimate when it's at the state level between the elected officials of that state and its people, whereas at the government level, it's just more chaotic.
I think that's all a charade. But also, so is it cars registered in that state? Is it cars sold in that state that have to have this mechanism? It's
citizens of that state.
If your primary residence is in that state, you are subject to that state's laws.
You know what's really good, though? If certain states instituted this law about your car, not turning on unless you passed a breathalyzer, then what would happen is you would have certain states that passed it with much better safety records. And the only defense for the states that didn't pass it will be, no, we want to support our right to drunk driving.
It is one of those things where when we look at policies that, for example, education, and we look at the financing of education as a priority, and then where are kids actually doing the best, highest graduation rates, etc., it's very, very clear. And it's turning into a situation where those states that have the poorest funding of education, and as a result, obviously, the poorest educations, are almost defending their right to
be stupid,
to not spend money on education. Absolutely. Let's take a break. I know we're over time here. We will take a break. Make sure to go to donateyouraccount.com/David Pakman Show. Donate your Facebook and Twitter followers to the show. It's a very cool new tool developed by our friend Kyle Shank. And do your Amazon.com purchases through the banner on davidpakman.com.